go ahead. Let's go ahead and turn our Bibles to James chapter 3. We'll spend the majority of our time. James chapter 3. James is known as the book of wisdom in the New Testament. And in the Old Testament, people say that Proverbs is the book of wisdom. But there's been a bunch of speculation that it's not just the book of Proverbs, but also Song of Solomon as Ecclesiastes. As we all come to know, King Solomon wrote Ecclesiastes, and he also wrote Song of Solomon in his youth to his wife. We also know that he wrote many of the Proverbs, and some of the Proverbs they have other authors in them as well. But James takes a bit of a different role in the New Testament, and I thought I had it bookmarked in my Bible, but I guess I was using my other Bible, so give me just a second to turn there. But the tongue is very powerful. It's in fact the reason why we have books. We think something, we say something, we speak it, we write it down. Tongues are something we cannot always predict. And when we can predict it and use it for good, it can be such a blessing. One of the things I just absolutely love and has grown in my life and has been emphasized among my brethren, both male and female, is singing. Not just singing regular songs. Of course, that can be fun depending on the person or individual you were singing that song with, but singing hymns, singing songs of praise. And if you have a good relationship and you practice singing with your brethren, it's really amazing. And when you go to Bible seminars, Bible conventions, and you're around people that are similar, kind of like you, and are walking the same walk, fighting the same fights, not exactly the same, but they're on the same path that you're also walking, singing with your brethren comes phenomenal. And if you take singing seriously, the way that I do, and my brethren here, you start to realize the effect it has. Now, I've been away from Sebastian for a while. I haven't seen him in a whole year. And when I've had my breaks during school and I've come down, he gets called to go to work. And there came a time when someone asked me, "You mad at Sebastian?" And I said, "No, our schedules are just opposite right now, but I wish he was here." So whenever I saw him and I said, "You're leading singing," he's like, "Yes, I requested that he sing 'Why Did My Savior Come to Earth?'" Reason being is because that was the first song that we learned how to harmonize with him, Carrie, Alex, and myself, and Alistair was there as well. And so when we harmonize, I take the tenor, Sebastian takes the lead, and Carrie takes the bass, and Alex fills in. He makes it more powerful. And singing is so powerful. It's something we do with our tongue. Singing is not just keeping a tune, but when we sing songs of him, most of the time we're singing scripture. One of my favorite songs is, probably my favorite song is "Send the Light," the Macedonian call. The call that Paul got in a dream, a vision, saying you're going to Macedonia. And that's where that song comes from. And you see, at first I thought it was just a cool tune. It's cool, it's loud, it's proud, it has an echo, and people want to sing that song because it's catchy and it grabs the audience's attention. But it's a song about the Macedonian call and furthering the gospel. Upon my living situation in the Southwest, I have these two brethren named Raul Ferris and Jesse Stewart, who just recently came back from a mission trip. They were just with Austin Fowler and Carrie in Costa Rica. And these two individuals are really cool. Jesse, I believe, is 35, and Raul is nearing 50, he's 49. But these guys are evangelists, extreme evangelists. One day, I was with Raul, and he heard an ambulance go by. And as we were talking with our conversation, he goes, "Stop right now, BJ. Let's pray for the ambulance right now in this situation." So we bow our heads, and he starts praying for the ambulance. And he starts praying for the people who need the ambulance. And I was moved by my brother, my older brother. So cool. He started praying for people who he didn't even know, started praying. And as I met Jesse, Jesse said, I have vacuuming duties this week, BJ, and you have the trash. And he goes, we're so cool. We're amazing. We have duties. It's the first week of school, and they chose us to serve. And at first, I was kind of like, where are the trash cans? It's a big building. There's so many things. And he goes, don't worry. I'll show you. Come on. Let's take a field trip. These guys, Jesse and Raul, have hearts of servants. And wherever they go, they like to serve. And they tried to change the words of send the light. Instead of saying, send the light, they go, preach the word, preach the word. And they tried to get me to change it one day during chapel. And I said, I'm not changing the words. But instead of them getting me to change the words, they started singing it while I was leading singing. And by the end of the song, I noticed that they got the students to start saying, preach the word instead of send the light. And it was kind of cool, just the influence they have. And these two gentlemen have tongues of encouragement. And if I can be honest, I don't recall a time they ever cut someone down. Now, when we say the tongue is powerful and the tongue is untamable, we usually think of scenarios like a neighbor, an enemy. But the tongue that we use on a daily basis is used around our people that we love the most, people that we hang around with, our biological brothers and sisters, our family that we hang out all the time. In my instance, it's my church family. It's my brethren here. And the tongue is very unpredictable. We get caught up in the moment all the time, and sometimes something will slip out. And sometimes we forget that we can use our tongue to heal. We use it to cut down like a weapon. And I've come upon 2 Kings, get introduced to the story of Elijah, and then Ahab. And Ahab's wife is Jezebel. And boy, did she do some damage with her tongue. And Ahab was a sorry man for listening to her. Of course, he chose her as a wife, but she did not do any good. In fact, if you haven't read the story, I would say go ahead and read it. But she died a violent death because of her actions and her tongue, and she was thrown to the dogs. And what I mean when she was thrown to the dogs is at the end of her life, they came to kill her, and they threw her off the tower. And the prophecy was fulfilled that only her bones would be left, because dogs came, tore off her flesh, and only bones were left. Yeah, that's pretty intense. But Jezebel was a very evil individual, and her tongue was the reason why she was evil. She did not use it for good at all. But the way James uses it here is very poetic, but it's also very sincere, and it hits to your heart. So let us go ahead and begin in verses 1. This is James chapter 3, and I'm reading again from the New King James Version. My brethren, let not many of you become teachers, knowing that we shall receive stricter judgment. He's talking to anybody who preaches the word. For we all stumble in many things. If anyone does not stumble in word, he is a perfect man, able also to bridle the whole body. This is also, of course, sarcastic, for there is no perfect man. Verses 3. Indeed, we put bits in horses' mouths that they may obey us, and we turn their whole body. Verse 4. Look also at the ships, and although they are also large and are driven by fierce winds, they are turned by a very small rudder wherever the pilot desires. Even so, the tongue is a little member and boasts great things. See how great a forest a little fire kindles? Verse 6. And the tongue is a fire, a world of iniquity. The tongue is set among our members, that it defiles the whole body and sets on fire the course of nature. And it is set on fire by hell. For every kind of beast and bird and reptile and creature of the sea is tamed and has been tamed by mankind. But no man can tame the tongue. It is an unruly evil, full of deadly poison. With it we bless our God and Father, and with it we curse men who have been made in the similitude of God. And out of the same mouth proceed blessing and cursing. My brethren, these things ought not to be so. Does a spring send forth fresh water and bitter from the same opening? Can a fig tree, my brethren, bear olives, or a grapevine bear figs? Thus, no spring yields both salt water and fresh water. Verses 11 and 12 is James, he's being sarcastic, saying, how can a fresh stream of water give salt water? And how can a fruit tree bear something else rather than what it is? Because we all know if you plant an apple seed, you're going to get an apple tree. And if we plant an orange seed, we're going to get an orange tree. And God has already set things in motion that we cannot undo. So James is being sarcastic. But verses 2 and 3, for we all stumble in many things. If anyone does not stumble in word, he is a perfect man, able also to bridle the whole body. If he's able to tame his tongue, he is able to control all of his body. Verse 3, indeed, we put bits in horses' mouths that they may obey us, and we turn their whole body. This right here, verses 4, is very, very realistic. We did an experiment. It sounds weird, but we did an experiment at school, and they said build a small ship without a rudder. So I actually let my friends build a ship because I said, I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm going to make the sail, so I'll make the sail. And then we kind of told ourselves we're not going to be able to control it going downstream. And so we just let the boat go and go and go. There was no direction, and it just kind of wandered. And when we wanted it to go a certain way, it couldn't go a certain way. It didn't have any command, couldn't do any action. And in verses 4, look at also the ships. Although they are so large and are driven by fierce winds, they are turned by a very small rudder wherever the pilot desires. Now, if I sit here and now I desire a friendship with Andy, how is my rudder being the tongue, going to direct the kind of relationship I have with Andy? Now I can say, Andy, I don't want to go to breakfast with you. I don't want to wake up early. Now, that may sound reasonable, but we all know who we're talking to. I know Andy, my apologies, likes to get up early. I know Andy enjoys a good cup of coffee, but not just any cup of coffee, a conversational cup of coffee. Now, I have the power to deny him and ignore him, but let's be honest, we all don't like being ignored, and it's greater to be acknowledged. So I have the power to deny Andy, but I also have the power to go and enjoy Andy's company and make him have a good day and myself have a good day. And this sounds so childish, but it's super true, and it happens every day. Now, if my dad says, at my age, 29, go take out the trash, and I said, Dad, I don't live here no more, I don't have to take out the trash. Well, I'm his son, he's still going to get mad at me, and there will be consequences, but I can easily just go take out the trash, or not even wait for him to say, go take out the trash. I already know what to do. I can take out the trash. But if I decide to argue, then that means I also desire confrontation. My tongue has the power to do so. And if, let's say, I hurt Alex and I don't apologize, Alex is going to be a little mad. Alex is going to forgive me. Alex forgives, but I still hurt Alex. Doesn't mean it because he just forgives me and I don't acknowledge it that it disappeared. No, it happened. But I have the power to say, hey, I was wrong. I'm sorry. And what I love about Alex's forgiveness is Alex will play around. So we all know that I'm a thin guy. And so I don't finish my plate of food all the time. Where there came a point where I moved in an apartment with Sebastian. So now Sebastian started to eat my leftovers. And it became Sebastian who always ate my leftovers. I just left it like that. I was no longer with Carrie and Alex. You see, it used to be Alex who finished my leftovers. And in fact, Alex looked forward to getting my leftovers. So one day, I don't know where we were at, but I believe it was at a restaurant. And because of my situation with Sebastian, when I wasn't hungry anymore, I pushed my plate to Sebastian. Sebastian's going to eat that. He needs the protein. He's going to the gym in a couple hours. Alex looks at me, and I'm kind of thrown off. And I'm like, are you okay, Alex? Alex goes, oh, no, I'm okay. And then later, Alex goes, BJ, come here. I kind of like, hey, what's wrong, Alex? And he goes, you hurt me. And I go, what do you mean I hurt you, Alex? You hurt my feelings. And I go, you have to tell me right now. And Alex goes, I used to eat your leftovers, and you gave them to Sebastian, and you didn't ask me if I wanted your leftovers. I wasn't going to argue. It was funny. But I said, I'm so sorry. Next time, you'll get my leftovers. And it was so funny to me at the time, but Alex is used to it. And I could have said, Alex, get over it. But I decided, knowing my brother, knowing how he is, I'm going to play back with Alex. I'm going to be gentle with Alex. I'm going to laugh with Alex because Alex likes laughing. And if you don't know this, talk to him for 1 minute, and I guarantee you, you're going to laugh. But the tongue is also used for bad things. It can be used to gain favor over someone. It can be used to ignore responsibility. It can be used to not own up to your own actions, your own words. And you see, he says right here in verses 1 and 2, verses 1, let not many of you become teachers, knowing that we shall receive a stricter judgment. In Ecclesiastes chapter 13, and this is something that shakes a lot of us to the core, many of the students when we started going into the text. So if you want to go with me to Ecclesiastes chapter 13, we're going to go all the way to the end of the chapter, because what's very, very astonishing is how King Solomon ends the book. You see, a thesis statement is usually, I'm sorry, please forgive me, Ecclesiastes does not have 13 chapters, it has 12. So let's turn to Ecclesiastes chapter 12, and we're going to go to verses 14. But usually, in a book, the thesis statement of the book is in the beginning. But Solomon saves it for the last sentence of his book. We're actually going to start in verses 13 and 14. 12. Let us hear the conclusion of the whole matter. And Solomon's talking about life, good and bad. Fear God, keep his commandments, for this is man's all. For God will bring every work into judgment, including every secret thing, whether good and evil. And let's go back up to verses 9. And moreover, because the preacher was wise, he still taught the people knowledge. Yes, he pondered and sought out and set order in many proverbs. The preacher sought to find acceptable words, and what was written was upright, words of truth. The words of the wise are like goads, and the words of the scholars are like well-driven nails given by one shepherd. And further, my son, be admonished by these. Of making many books there is no end, and much study is wearisome to the flesh. But the conclusion of the matter in verses 14, God will bring every work into judgment, including every secret thing, whether good or evil. King Solomon says, it doesn't matter where you're at in your life, everything that you say, everything that you do, it's going to be brought up on the day of judgment. That's really scary. And so we have this organ in our brain. It's called the apnea, and it actually records and remembers everything that you say. Now, our consciousness cannot remember everything, but that part of the brain records everything. And so when I started putting things together, and I started to realize the little time we have on earth, thinking spiritually and contemplating life, trying to dissect what Solomon wants us to know, is that God knows everything. And going through life, we forget. And everything I say and do, he knows. He created a part of my brain called the apnea that records everything. We are God's creation, and he is going to bring everything, whether in secret good or bad. And so, while at Southwest, it's been great. And when I say Southwest, I mean just the congregation there itself. It's easy to get along. There's no cursing. There's no bad saying about one another. And if there is, it's going to be fixed fast. And I'm around a bunch of people who are doing and thinking in a likewise manner. But when we go outside of that circle, when we go out into the real world, which is what we're supposed to be doing with the gospel anyways, it can get hard and we can slip and our tongue can become dangerous. But that's not what we're supposed to do. Now, verses 26 through 40 is about the Christ is preached to the Ethiopian eunuch. Now, this is a very short and powerful story, but what Philip does is amazing. So let's go ahead and dive right into verses 26. Oh, wait. I'm sorry. We're not going to do that because I turned the page to Acts. Please forgive me. This is why bookmarks are good. Do I use them? No, I should probably get some. I know my sister has bought me many that have not been opened. Verses 13, we're going to finish just chapter 3 of James. Verses 13 in James chapter 3. Who is wise and understanding among you? Let him show by good conduct that his works are done in the meekness of wisdom. But if you have a bitter envy and self-seeking in your hearts, do not boast and lie against the truth. This wisdom does not descend from above, but is earthly, sensual, and demonic. For where envy and self-seeking exists, confusion and every evil thing are there. But the wisdom that is from above is pure, then peaceable, gentle, willing to yield, full of mercy and good fruits, without partiality and without hypocrisy. Now the fruit of righteousness is sown in peace by those who make peace. By those who make peace. Turn with me to Matthew chapter 5. And I'll make sure I'm at the right book this time. Matthew chapter 5. And we'll start in verses 3, just reading the Beatitudes. Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn, for they shall be comforted. And blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they shall be filled. Blessed are those who are merciful, for they shall obtain mercy. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. And blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called sons of God. And blessed are those who are persecuted for righteousness' sake, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Verses 9, blessed are those who are peacemakers, for they shall be called sons of God. Carrie once said, blessed are the peacemakers, but Carrie said, blessed are the peacekeepers. We all grow, we all go through life, and sometimes we don't make peace with our brethren that we love. And I've heard it that it's actually better to make peace with your enemies than friends, because friends always betray you time and time again, but an enemy proves his worthiness to you. But do you have love for your enemy the way you do for your brothers? I don't think so. King Solomon remained peaceful with all the other nations around him, and because of that, he was able to build such a greater empire, because the empire that he inherited from David was because of all the kingdoms that David conquered. But that can easily be taken away if he did not maintain peace. James chapter 3 is supposed to be a chapter of understanding, but not just taming your tongue. Understanding why you have a tongue and how to use your tongue, and understanding why we should use our tongue the way Jesus Christ used our tongue. Now, one thing that God has always done and always will do is he always tells the truth. Eve, if you eat of that tree, you shall surely die. Abraham, I promise you that the seed will come through your son Isaac. Solomon, I will bless your nation. He even promised Abraham, Isaac will be a great nation. But he also kept his promise about Ishmael, saying, I will make him also a great nation. Not the promised nation, but God kept his promise. God kept his promise when he said the children will enter the promised land. And he showed Moses his promise. Now, because of certain acts that Moses did, Moses didn't enter the promised land. But he promised that his people would enter the promised land. God keeps his promises, and God always tells the truth. And God loves his children. Now for teachers, which this is a very scary thought. What kind of heart are teachers supposed to have? How are teachers supposed to use their tongue? Going to school, I was dealing with conflicting thoughts about I'm not supposed to be here, I'm not worthy enough, I've done a lot of mistakes and I've done wrong. Why am I here? And an instructor said, well, everyone thinks that way. And if they don't think that way, those people are not supposed to be here. But if you battle with your conscience and you ask God for forgiveness, but you don't just ask for forgiveness, you show it through your actions. You lend a hand to your brother, you ask for forgiveness, and you seek peace. No one has ever said a murderer sleeps peaceful at night. A murderer is always wondering, when is it my turn? I've done all these wrongs. I know I'm next. An enemy doesn't go back home when he's forgiven by his real enemy and say, he just let me go. He's always going to be looking over his shoulder saying, I know I did wrong. When is it my turn? When is it my turn? But people who maintain peace have peace. And people who have peace, they share that peace. No army ever went into battle without ever looking over their shoulders. Let us go back to Genesis 39. No, I'm sorry. Genesis 50. And we're going to start in verses 15. When Joseph's brothers saw that their father was dead, they said, perhaps Joseph will hate us and may actually repay us for all the evil which we did to him. So they sent messengers to Joseph, saying, before your father died, he commanded, saying, thus you shall say to Joseph, I beg you, please forgive the trespass of your brothers and their sin, for they did evil to you. Now please forgive the trespass of the servants of the God of your father. And Joseph wept when they spoke to him. Then his brothers also went and fell down before his face, and they said, behold, we are your servants. And Joseph said to them, do not be afraid, for I am in the place of God. But as for you, you meant evil against me, but God meant it for good, in order to bring it about as of this day to save many people. Now therefore, do not be afraid. I will provide for you and your little ones. And he comforted them and spoke kindly to them. This is right after Joseph forgave his brothers, and they brought their dad back and all the tribes to Egypt so that they could be saved. This morning we talked about how Joseph didn't believe his brothers and he had put a test on them. But Joseph wanted to see his dad. Joseph wanted to see the one that raised him. But now that his father passed away, his brothers, they still know the wrong they did. And it's in the back of their mind. And so they start to ask Joseph for forgiveness again. But Joseph, knowing his purpose, says, don't be afraid, forgive them. And even after his father died, he maintained peace with his brothers. And he spoke kindly of them. As we continue at the end of the verses, we just read about the death of Joseph. And Joseph used his tongue for good. And even though he put his brothers to the test, he forgave them. And even though his brothers brought up their past sins, Joseph chose peace. And Joseph maintained peace. And this morning I said the opening of Exodus in verses 4, I believe. No, verses 6 and 5 is that when Joseph died, a new king arose that did not know God. All Joseph did during his whole life, and I wanted it to finish this morning in this way, but we didn't have enough time. All Joseph did was speak his dreams, speak what God wanted him to speak. And no one liked it, and he suffered for it. But Joseph maintained peace with the ones who did not maintain peace with him. So when we use our tongue, are we using it to maintain peace? But for teachers and for people who preach the word, are we using our tongue to further the gospel and not our own agenda? Are we using the tongue to save others and not point out each other's faults? Are we using the tongue to preach the resurrection of Christ instead of tearing down individuals? We all know the answer. And we're not supposed to do any of the wrong, because we will be judged with a stricter judgment. And this tongue is about warning. This chapter 3 in James, is about warning. But I also see it as a chapter about what to do. An encouraging chapter to say, this is what you need to do. An encouraging chapter, the way I am encouraged every time I sing hymns with my brother Sebastian, Alex, and Alistair. There's nothing greater than singing songs with my brothers. It's one of my most favorite things to do. There's nothing like it. And I love how there's songs Sebastian wants to learn, and we'll spend 2 hours learning that song. And even though I'm ready for the next song, I'm learning it with my brothers. That is the end of our lesson with this text. There's always room for invitation, and I always say make things right with God. But if you have a brother and you have sinned against him, or you're holding something against him, go to your brother and make peace. Likewise, sisters, brothers, we all know what God is trying to convey through his word. So if there is a need, please come to your brothers and sisters in the congregation as we stand and sing the song of invitation.